Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Barry Levine, the author of The Spider, was on the Dr. Oz show, and he was talking about Jeffrey Epstein's alleged suicide attempt the first time and alleged suicide success the second time. And he had some pretty interesting things to say. Now, I've been very clear about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein should have never, ever been in a jail cell with Nicholas Tartaglione. This is a straight-up cold-blooded killer, if the charges and the allegations can be believed. This is a man who allegedly murdered people over a drug deal gone wrong and then buries them on his own property. So this guy's a cop murdering people over drug deals, and they think it's a good-ass idea to put Jeffrey Epstein in a cell with him. Now, when you go to jail or you're going to prison and you're a cop, you have a target on you. Just like if you're a sex offender, you have a target on you. Now, could Tartaglione have been trying to gain some cred by attacking Jeffrey Epstein? What, would that be something that is out of character for a jail for that to occur in a jail? No, this kind of thing happens quite a bit to sexual predators in jail. And Tartaglione, knowing that he could, maybe get some stripes here, well, why would I think that Jeffrey Epstein would try to strangle himself in a jail cell with another man present? Does that make sense? Or does it make more sense that a man who is accused of murdering multiple people over a drug deal gone wrong could have been the one that assaulted Epstein? Now, we don't know because there's no camera footage. It wasn't preserved. So we don't know, and all we can do is speculate. But I know dudes like Tartaglione, and this isn't the kind of guy that's going to sit in the jail cell with Jeffrey Epstein and they're going to be slamming bones. They're not going to be trading recipes. These dudes aren't talking about the finances of Wall Street. Tartaglione isn't playing that kind of game with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. And it boggles my mind why Jeffrey Epstein was ever in the cell with Tartaglione at all. Well, in this article tonight by OK Magazine, like I said, Barry Levine is going to talk a little bit about the different versions of what Jeffrey Epstein said took place in the cell that night. Headline: Jeffrey Epstein told inmates different versions of his suicide attempt. This article was published on November 10th of 2020, and there doesn't seem to be an author, so I'm guessing OK Magazine staff produced it. Disgraced financier, pedophile, and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in August 2019, allegedly. Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center where he was awaiting trial. The New York City medical examiner ruled Epstein's death suicide by hanging. Yet there was no pictures that preserved the crime scene. There was no investigation. The body was moved. The cameras didn't work. And we have Baden, who has a whole different explanation about what went on. So, anyone who's running around and talking about they know for sure one way or the other what happened here is lying. And there's a lot of that lately. A bunch of fakers who have thought that it's a good idea to come up with their wild-ass, weird nonsense and inject it into this case. It's just, some of it is so absurd that it's not even funny. But anyone who runs around and tells you for sure, one way or the other, they know what happened in that cell is lying to you. You know who knows what happened in that cell? Nicholas Tartaglione, folks. That's it. That's the only person that we know of. Epstein had attempted suicide earlier that year, allegedly, but was unsuccessful. Now, investigative journalist Barry Levine is telling Dr. Oz that Epstein told fellow inmates conflicting stories of exactly what happened the night of July 23rd, 2019. Well, look, Epstein told lawyers that he was assaulted. And then all of a sudden it was, oh no, it was an attempted suicide. But none of the cameras worked. There was no evidence that it's an attempted suicide. And you have him in a cell with Tartaglione, who is obviously not above violence. This is a man who was not shy when it came to the world of violence, okay? There is no reason for Epstein to be in there with him. No logical explanation. How about putting him in with Bill Mercy, the jailhouse snitch guy that was running around and being Epstein's, companion? Why not pair them two up, throw them in a cell together, have Mercy act as a jailhouse snitch, and at the same time keep an eye on Epstein? Instead, no, let's go ahead and we'll throw him there with Tartaglione because, that's a great idea. And Tartaglione is obviously a very, 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 reliable individual. And he's not going to hurt Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, come on. Putting Epstein in that cell is akin to cutting your leg with a deep gashing wound and throwing yourself into shark-infested waters. That was always going to be the result, okay? I don't want to hear Epstein, he tried to strangle himself in the jail cell with Tartaglione there. It makes no sense, folks. It really makes zero sense. At 1:27 a.m. that morning, Epstein was found semi-conscious in his cell with injuries to his neck. The convicted felon told his lawyers that he had been assaulted by his cellmate, suspected murderer Nicholas Tartaglione. So Epstein told his lawyers that he was assaulted by Tartaglione. Why would he make that up? Why would he say he was assaulted if he wasn't? So he doesn't get on suicide watch? That's his ultimate goal is to commit suicide? I guess, right? I'm not ruling it out. I'm certainly not saying that he didn't kill himself. What I'm saying is the shit does not add up. Way too many coincidences, and Occam's razor says that this shit is off kilter. Something is not right here. And the fact that he was found unresponsive or semi-unresponsive in the cell and then related to his lawyers that he was attacked by Tartaglione, I don't understand how the jail can't take that seriously, right? Don't they, wouldn't they investigate something like that? Then again, they probably didn't want any kind of coverage on the fact that they put Epstein, one of the most prolific inmates in the prison system, in with Tartaglione. Would have you put El Chapo in with somebody like Tartaglione? Of course you wouldn't. Would you put John Gotti in with somebody like Tartaglione? Of course you wouldn't. Did they put Keith Raniere in with somebody like Tartaglione? Did they put Bill Cosby in with somebody like Tartaglione? Or Raniere? Of course they didn't. So why in the hell would they put Jeffrey Epstein in with Tartaglione? Now later on today, what we're going to do is I'm going to read another article and we're going to get to know Tartaglione a little bit better. And then you folks make up your own minds what you think makes sense, obviously. But for me, there's just no way in hell I'm biting on the narrative that it was just, circumstance that Epstein's in that cell with Tartaglione and then he ends up being, quote unquote, almost suicided by himself. Tartaglione was questioned by prison officials and denied any involvement in harming Epstein. An internal investigation later cleared the prisoner of any connection with the event. How could they do that? How is that possible if they didn't have the tapes? If the tapes weren't available for anyone to see, how can you clear him? What is it, his word against Epstein's? Or is it that you don't want the blowback on you? You don't want the media going crazy and wondering why Epstein was assaulted or why Epstein was even in this jail cell in the first place. That's the real motivation with the prison system. It's never about coming clean and being transparent, like they work for us. It's always about hiding things and obfuscating and making sure the general public isn't aware of their bullshit. Well, guess what? You guys made a big mistake. Locking everybody in their homes and giving everybody all this time to ruminate was a huge mistake, and the powers that be are going to feel the repercussions because people have had enough. People are asking questions now, and I know most of you out there are not buying this narrative. What did these two inmates that you spoke to in the companion program tell you about this July 23rd suicide attempt, which we know is real? Dr. Oz asked Levine. Levine replied yes. What's interesting about that is that Jeffrey Epstein gave two completely different versions of what happened that night. Initially, he told one of the men he made a strangling type of motion around his neck. So, Dr. Oz says an attempt which we know was real? No, we don't know it was real, Dr. Oz. You're another one of these Johnny-come-latelys. A guy that has a little bit of reach, has a couple people on his show, and all of a sudden he's an expert? Sorry, pal, not buying that either. We don't know it was real. We don't know anything. We have no evidence. Can anyone point to conclusive evidence telling us what went on that night in that cell? Besides Tartaglione, there's nobody that can tell us that one way or the other, so it's up to speculation. And for me and where I'm sitting and for my money, oh yeah, guys like Tartaglione, they like to get it in. They're going to make someone like Jeffrey Epstein taste that smoke. Dr. Oz is then seen showing a ringing motion with his hands. With his hands like this? With his hands, that's correct. We have both of these men on the record in the book. The gentleman said, "Were you in fact strangled?" And he nodded. Well, it's not just the two inmates. What about the most important part here, in my opinion, is what he told his lawyers, that he was assaulted by Tartaglione. Why doesn't that carry any weight? And why are we only relying on what the two felons have to say? Now, don't get me wrong. This lawyer is no better than the felons here, right? Let's be real. The felons are probably better people in the long run than these lawyers are. But for credibility purposes, we have a lawyer and an inmate who Epstein said that he was assaulted by Tartaglione and left semi-unconscious. And then for one other inmate, he said something different. He told the second gentleman when he was asked about the incident with the inmate, he said, "I don't know what happened. I was asleep. I woke up, and the next thing I knew, I was on the floor." So we have two conflicting statements by Jeffrey Epstein to these two inmates. So for me, again, I'm pretty convinced at this point that Tartaglione most certainly assaulted Jeffrey Epstein. How it stopped that first time, I don't know. Was it to send a message to Epstein? Was Tartaglione in there to send a message? Tartaglione's from Westchester. Westchester is a suburb of New York, right up the block. 40 minutes or so north of New York City. In fact, I'm from Westchester. So there's a lot going on here, folks. And I'm not willing to just, discard the whole entire storyline of Tartaglione and Epstein as something that has been open and shut. For me, there's a lot more there. And Tartaglione has a lot more to tell when it comes to this story. Will he ever? I highly doubt it. Why would he at this point? He's facing these murder charges. I'm sure that when he gets celled up with his cellie, when he hits the main line, he'll be telling all about how he assaulted Jeffrey Epstein. After Epstein's death, Tartaglione claimed that he was threatened by jail guards and told to stop talking after describing Epstein's death and conditions in the jail to the media. So again, how would he know? Tartaglione doesn't know about Epstein's death. He wasn't there. He was moved out of the cell for some reason, and nobody else was moved in. Again, why wasn't Mr. Mercy moved in? The prison snitch that was supposedly keeping Epstein company. Perfect companion for Jeffrey Epstein. Perfect cellmate for Jeffrey Epstein. Not Nicholas Tartaglione. You put Tartaglione in with another hardened criminal, another murder suspect, somebody who's going to be in prison the rest of their lives for a violent crime. Jeffrey Epstein? Not so much, at least not till after the trial. After the trial and after he faces justice? Oh, I don't care. They could have mainlined him that day. The day he was done and he was sentenced, I would have been totally fine with him being put in general population. And if the inmates would have done their business, hey, that's just the way it goes in there. There's a different law in those jails and in those prisons. And somebody like Jeffrey Epstein stands no chance. So if he killed himself or if he was killed in that jail cell, it doesn't matter. He got the easy way out. Because if he would have had to face the rest of his life in prison, he would have been looking at one of the most torturous experiences one could possibly imagine for somebody like him. It's a good thing that Ghislaine Maxwell is going to get a taste. Surprisingly, the video footage taken from outside Epstein's jail cell on the night of his first apparent suicide attempt was permanently deleted. MCC officials mistakenly saved video from a different floor of the federal detention facility, prosecutors said in a court filing. So again, how is that even possible? It's not likely, okay? These jails and prisons are shit shows, but come on. Who is buying that nonsense? And the fact that the evidence wasn't preserved, isn't there a chain of custody? And all of the people who were involved should be arrested or fired and face trial? Where did the tape go? Why wasn't it preserved? Who deleted it? Whose job was that? What is their relation to all of this? Do they know anyone who's tied to Jeffrey Epstein? These are questions that the investigators should be asking, and the legacy media, but they're not. So we'll continue to ask them here. And then eventually, the legacy media will piggyback off of what us independent content creators are doing, and they'll start reporting it months later. The MCC inadvertently preserved video from the wrong tier within the MCC, and as a result, video from outside the defendant's cell on July 22nd, 23rd, 2019 no longer exists. Yeah, okay, I'm sure that's what occurred. I'm sure that the video wasn't preserved. It wasn't done on purpose. Nah, no way. It would take the most epic amount of F-ups all in a row to happen all at the same time and to line up for this to take place. There is no end here, okay? There's no closing this narrative yet. We still need to know what happened in that jail cell, and nobody seems to be asking that question. Nobody seems to care. Well, I do, and I want to know what in the hell Jeffrey Epstein was doing in a jail cell with Nicholas Tartaglione. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has donated to the podcast, thank you very much. All right, folks, I'll be back later on with the Daily Drop. Enjoy your day.